Okay, so let's jump into this whole Elizabeth Holmes thing.
Yeah.
Is she a visionary or a con artist?
Well, that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, she's like the embodiment of that question, grifter, gifted,
Right.
her story. It really makes you think about how ambition and deception can be so close together.
Especially in the world of tech startups.
Exactly. Where pushing the boundaries is like celebrated.
Totally. And we've got a lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
We've got Wikipedia articles on both Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos.
Okay.
And we've got a few episodes from the podcast The Dropout.
Oh, yeah? The Dropout.
Which really gets into
it goes deep.
the rise and fall.
It does. It goes beyond, like, just the headlines and stuff.
Yeah.
They've got interviews with people who were actually there.
Oh, wow.
Like former employees and investors, even patients.
This is like a real...
It's a human perspective
Yeah.
on the impact of all of her actions.
So we're not just dealing with, like, abstract ideas.
Right.
These are real-world consequences for
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
So just to kind of, like, give everyone a refresher.
Okay.
Elizabeth Holmes, she kind of, like, burst onto the scene in the early 2010s.
Yeah.
With this idea of blood testing, but you only need a tiny finger prick.
It was a revolutionary idea.
Revolutionary.
Imagine no more needles.
No more big needles.
Or huge vials of blood.
Yeah.
This was like her big thing.
This was her vision.
Yeah. Her vision for the future of healthcare.
Like,
Painless, accessible healthcare for everybody.
And it wasn't just an idea.
No.
She got millions in funding.
Oh, yeah.
And these huge partnerships with companies like Walgreens.
Huge players.
Walgreens went all in on this.
They did.
They retrofitted like hundreds of stores.
Yeah, to accommodate those Theranos testing centers.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
a big deal.
And she was everywhere.
Oh, yeah?
Like magazine covers.
Sharing the stage with, like, political heavy hitters.
Yeah.
And in 2014, Forbes named her the world's youngest self-made female billionaire.
It was a meteoric rise.
Unbelievable.
And she was so good at cultivating this image
Oh, yeah.
of a visionary.
Like the black turtleneck.
Oh, yeah.
An intense stare.
Yeah.
Very Steve Jobs.
It's like she was channeling him.
Totally. And that deep voice.
Oh, yeah. What was that about?
Some people say it was all part of the plan.
Really?
Like a carefully constructed persona to command authority and respect.
In such a male-dominated industry?
Yeah.
It's like she was playing a character.
It's fascinating. Like
Yeah.
every detail was calculated.
To project this aura.
Of brilliance.
Of innovation.
Yeah, and for a while.
It worked.
It totally worked.
Yeah.
People were captivated.
Yeah, they bought into the hype.
Hook, line, and sinker.
Of this young woman who was going to revolutionize healthcare.
It's a great story.
It is a great story.
But here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Was she really a true believer?
Yeah.
Or was she just playing everybody?
Like, was she deceiving everyone from the start?
Yeah, like was she genuinely trying to make blood testing better? Or was this all just a scheme to get rich and powerful?
It's the million-dollar question.
I know.
And one that I think we're going to have to explore further.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
As we get into.
As we kind of dig into.
The cracks in the facade.
Yeah.
Because as we know, this fairy tale rise.
It didn't last forever.
It did not last.
No.
So in 2015,
the
Wall Street Journal,
here we go.
They published this explosive expose.
Yeah.
Led by this investigative journalist, John Kerry Rue.
He was relentless.
And he revealed
serious concerns
about the accuracy and the reliability of Theranos' technology.
Technology.
Yeah, so this is where it starts to unravel.
Right.
Kerry Rue's investigation revealed that Theranos, they weren't even using their own technology.
Gas?
For most of the tests.
Wow.
They were relying on modified third-party machines.
Oh,
really.
Yeah.
Even though they were claiming
that they had this revolutionary technology.
It was going to change the world.
Yeah.
Wow. And it wasn't just about the tests being inaccurate.
Oh, no.
There were these allegations of this, like, toxic work culture at Theranos.
Yikes.
With Holmes fostering this climate of secrecy and fear.
Doesn't sound good.
It wasn't good.
So much for disrupting healthcare. If you're creating a toxic workplace,
right,
it's not exactly revolutionary.
It's the opposite of what she was claiming to do.
It's like the opposite.
Yeah, and so now the focus shifts away from the technology itself and onto her leadership.
And the decisions being made at the top.
Yeah. Was she a victim of her own ambition?
Ooh, good question.
Or did she just knowingly perpetuate this deception?
Yeah, did she believe she could fix it?
Or was she just in too deep?
Yeah, or was she just lying the whole time?
Okay, so we've got the stage set.
We do.
We have this visionary with this revolutionary idea.
Right.
This crazy rise to fame and fortune.
meteoric rise.
And then cracks start to appear. So where do we go from here?
Well, this is where the story takes a turn.
Ooh.
The Wall Street Journal article, that was just the tip of the iceberg. Multiple investigations, lawsuits.
Oh, no.
And ultimately, a very high-profile trial.
Buckle up, everybody.
This is going to be good.
Stay with us as we dive deeper into the unraveling of Theranos and all the legal battles that came after.
The drama continues. All right, so we're back.
Back in the thick of it.
And when we left off, things weren't looking so good for Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos.
No, they were not. It was like watching a slow-motion train wreck.
You know it's going to be bad, but you just can't look away.
Exactly. And it wasn't just a failed technology.
Right.
This was about real people.
It was about the human cost of ambition and deception.
So remember that Wall Street Journal article?
Oh, yeah, the one that kind of started it all.
That was just the beginning.
Yeah, once those cracks appeared,
The whole thing started to crumble.
under the weight of all the scrutiny.
It's like a domino effect. And the regulators who had kind of been hands-off before.
They're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, they started taking a closer look.
Like the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services.
GMS.
Yeah, they launched a full-blown investigation.
Into Theranos' lab practices.
The whole thing.
And what they found was not good.
Not good at all.
They uncovered all these serious deficiencies in the lab.
Everything from testing procedures to the competency of the staff.
It wasn't just a few inaccurate tests.
No, this was systemic.
And then those partnerships.
Oh, yeah, the big ones.
Walgreens Safeway.
Those started to fall apart, too.
Once the doubts became public.
Nobody wanted to be associated with Theranos anymore.
They didn't want to risk their reputations.
Or open themselves up to lawsuits.
Like Walgreens, they had invested so much.
We went all in.
Hundreds of stores retrofitted.
It was a major initiative for them.
It was a huge deal.
So when they pulled out,
Disaster.
total disaster.
For Theranos.
Not just a PR nightmare, it was a financial hit too.
And then the state of Arizona.
Where they did a lot of those blood tests.
They filed a lawsuit.
They were not messing around.
Alleging consumer fraud.
Like 1.5 million blood tests, they said.
While concealing or misrepresenting.
Key facts about their accuracy.
And on top of all that.
The SEC investigation.
Oh boy.
They charged Holmes and her former president, Sunny Balwani.
With massive fraud.
Huge.
The allegations were that they had deliberately misled investors.
About the technology, its financial performance, even their contracts with the military.
So this wasn't just about like bending the rules a little.
No, this was about breaking them.
And this is where the legal battles really get going.
Things get serious.
So the civil lawsuits.
Right.
The SEC charges.
Yeah.
That was just the beginning.
In 2018, both Holmes and Balwani, they were indicted on criminal charges.
Criminal charges.
Wire fraud and conspiracy.
This is big time.
Serious charges.
With the potential for
some serious prison time.
And the trials were just as dramatic.
Oh, yeah.
As the story itself.
Oh, the media was all over it.
It was like a modern-day Greek tragedy.
With Holmes, the fallen hero, facing the consequences.
And the trials were fascinating.
They were, because they gave us a glimpse inside Theranos.
And into Elizabeth Holmes' leadership style?
Like, how does she operate?
What was she really like?
Yeah, it wasn't just about the technology anymore.
It was about the woman behind it.
Right.
The trials revealed the persona.
And manipulation.
The intimidation.
The secrecy.
It's unbelievable how she pulled it off.
No.
How she convinced so many smart people.
Powerful people.
To believe her.
Despite all the evidence.
It really makes you think about
the power of belief.
Yeah, and the dark side of ambition.
So we've got the investigations, the lawsuits, the criminal trials.
What happens next?
This is where it all comes to a head.
Okay.
Those trials went on for months.
Months.
Both sides presenting their cases.
Yeah.
Calling witnesses.
Painting very different pictures of Elizabeth Holmes.
The prosecution, they argued that she was a fraud. That she knew exactly what she was doing.
Deceiving investors and patients for her own personal gain.
They pointed to all the evidence.
The doctored report.
The fake demonstrations.
The threats against whistleblowers.
They said it was all about the money.
But the defense.
They tried to paint a different picture.
Oh, really?
They said she was naive.
Naive.
But ambitious.
Okay.
An entrepreneur who got in over her head.
So they were saying she believed in the technology.
Yeah, and that any misrepresentations were just mistakes.
Not intentional acts of deception.
They said she was a true believer.
So who did the jury believe?
Well, that's where things get interesting.
Okay.
Because they didn't just say guilty or not guilty.
What?
They found her guilty on 4 counts of defrauding investors.
Okay.
But they acquitted her on 4 counts of defrauding patients.
A split verdict.
I know, right?
That's crazy.
It makes you wonder what they were thinking. It does. It shows how hard it is to categorize someone like Elizabeth Holmes.
Was she greedy? Delusional? Or a little bit of both?
Even the jury couldn't decide for sure.
Wow, and what about Balwani?
He wasn't so lucky.
What happened?
The jury found him guilty on all 12 counts.
All 12.
Fraud and conspiracy, the whole shebang.
So they saw him as more actively involved.
More knowingly involved in the deception.
2 trials.
2 very different outcomes.
So did they get away with it?
Not exactly.
What happened?
In November 2022, Elizabeth Holmes was sentenced 11 years and 3 months in federal prison.
Wow.
And Balwani got even more.
How much?
12 years and 11 months.
That's serious time.
It is.
It seems like the justice system decided that actions have consequences.
No matter how charismatic you are.
No matter how convincing.
Yeah, those sentences sent shockwaves through Silicon Valley.
I bet.
It was a wake-up call.
You can't just move fast and break things.
Especially when you're dealing with people's health.
And well-being.
Exactly.
So we've got 2 high-profile convictions.
Years of legal battles.
A company that went from billions to 0?
Quite a fall from grace.
It really is.
It makes you wonder about the culture of Silicon Valley.
Yeah, the role of investors.
The ethics of innovation.
But the biggest question,
the one we should all be asking,
is what can we learn from this?
How do we avoid making the same mistakes?
Those are some great questions.
And I think we've got some answers.
Okay.
As we head into the final part of our deep dive.
Stick with us as we explore the aftermath of the Theranos scandal.
And the bigger picture implications for the tech industry and beyond.
Welcome back to our deep dive, everyone.
We're wrapping up our look at Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos.
And now we got to figure out what it all means.
Right, like what's the takeaway from all this?
Yeah, what did we learn?
Well, I think one thing's for sure.
What's that?
The ripple effects of this case are still being felt.
Especially in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, it's like a cautionary tale.
They're all studying it.
Trying to figure out how to avoid making the same mistakes.
That fake it till you make it thing.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't always work.
Especially when you're talking about people's health.
Yeah, people's lives are at stake.
Exactly.
And it really changed how investors behave.
Oh, yeah, big time.
Before Theranos, there was this
trust.
Yeah, almost like naivete.
They were so eager to get in on the next big thing.
Unicorn status?
Billions of dollars.
Yeah, they didn't always look closely enough.
At the technology?
Due diligence kind of went out the window.
Sometimes.
But after Theranos,
everything changed.
They got a lot more cautious.
Much more scrutiny.
They wanted to see the proof.
The data.
Not just a good story.
And a charismatic leader.
Right.
So it had a mixed impact.
Some say it made it harder for startups to get funding.
Especially in health tech.
Yeah. But on the other hand,
it forced companies to be more rigorous.
Build a solid foundation.
Not just chase hype.
So maybe it was a good thing in the long run.
A painful lesson.
But a necessary one.
To create a healthier startup ecosystem.
But we can't forget.
What's that?
The human cost.
Oh, yeah. There were real victims here.
People who relied on those inaccurate test results.
Employees whose careers were damaged.
Whistleblowers who are silenced.
That's the real tragedy of this whole thing.
It raises some ethical questions.
Yeah, that go beyond the legal stuff.
Like, what's the responsibility of entrepreneurs?
To be truthful?
To be transparent.
Even when they're under pressure.
To succeed.
Here.
And what are the media?
Did they play a role in this?
By hyping her up.
Without asking enough questions?
And then there's the gender angle.
Right.
Was she treated differently because she was a woman?
Was she celebrated more?
Or demonized more?
It's hard to say for sure.
But it's something to think about.
Definitely.
So we've got the Silicon Valley impact, the ethical questions, the gender dynamics, the human cost.
It's a lot to process.
Is there anything else?
One more thing.
What's that?
The story isn't over yet.
Oh, right. The appeals.
Holmes and Balwani are fighting their convictions.
They could go on for years.
And who knows what else might come out.
But even if it ends tomorrow,
the lessons of Theranos are still relevant.
It's a story that keeps on giving.
It makes us think about critical thinking.
About skepticism.
About ethical leadership.
And I think for our listeners,
yeah,
the Theranos saga is a reminder
that we all need to be careful.
We need to be discerning.
When we see something that seems too good to be true,
we need to ask questions.
Demand accountability.
Because real progress,
lasting change,
it comes from
transparency,
a commitment to doing good.
Well said. Thanks.
So there you have it.
The story of Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos.
A captivating, complex, and ultimately cautionary tale.
A lot to think about.
We hope you enjoyed this deep dive.
As always.
Keep learning, keep questioning.
And remember,
the pursuit of knowledge is a journey.
And it never really ends.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time.